There we go. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so this is about enjoying the journey as much as possible, but it's also to give you a bit of insight into where people can go wrong and to help you understand some of the realities. And Peter touched on some of the stuff just now, and I might comment as we go through on some of the things he mentioned specifically. So I saw this image and I thought it was really good because the doTERRA journey, in our case, is really a digital journey for the most part. Unlike people who've built it all face-to-face. Most people in our team, there are people that build it face-to-face, but we do a lot of work online, which a lot of people don't do. So here goes. Everybody has to go through the 4 stages of competence. And I have covered this before, but for the benefit of new people, when Peter and I joined last year, Peter joined officially in the October, I joined in the August officially, and I knew nothing about essential oils. In fact, I remember watching one of the videos, and I was watching this guy put some oil on his neck, and I didn't understand what he was doing. I really thought it was a really very strange thing to do. And so I knew nothing. I was basically unconsciously incompetent. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have a clue about what I had to learn in terms of essential oils. Now, I did know about network marketing, but I didn't know about anything about essential oils. And some people come into the business and they might know a great deal about essential oils, but they might be unconsciously incompetent when it comes to building a business. So there's 2 aspects to this. There's the knowledge of the product, and that's very important, that you experience the products, use the products, and become competent and develop a level of understanding about the products. But it's also true of the business. And I was very competent at building the business, but I didn't know anything about essential oils. So as you move through, you then become more aware that there are things that we need to learn. So when we get our oils and we look at our oils, we need to research what they do, what the benefits are, etc. So we become aware that there are things that we just don't know about. And then we become competent over time in certain aspects of using the oils. For example, if we've gone out and sampled people and we've got our own experience, we've started to experience the benefits of the oils, we then become consciously competent in the oils. But we need to go through the same process when it comes to building the business until eventually we can do things without even thinking about it. And that's called being unconsciously competent. And the best analogy to explain that is you all learn to drive, or most people learn to drive, and when you start, you have to think about everything, like checking your mirror, changing the gears, using the clutch, etc. But after a while, you don't even need to think about those things, and you can drive for miles and miles and miles, and you arrive at the destination, and you can't even remember the journey because you are now unconsciously competent. It means that it's in your subconscious, and you can do it without even thinking about it. And hopefully, we all get to that point, both in our knowledge of the products, but our knowledge of building the business as well. And what Peter was saying there about him being able to anticipate exactly what was going to happen is because he's done it all before, seen it all before, so he doesn't have to think about it. He knows what's going to happen. And it's very interesting. Now, once you go through that process and you become competent, what could possibly go wrong? If you know what to do and how to do it, what could go wrong then? Nothing, surely. Well, actually, everything can go wrong. Once we become competent, it's only the beginning of the adventure. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that can go wrong. But you have to build mental muscle. And I have a story, actually, about this, but I'll come on to this. This training started as a story, and then it kind of morphed into something else. But basically, when everything goes wrong and things are not going the way you want them to go, that's when it sorts the wheat from the chaff, and that's when you must believe in yourself. And this is a big area. It's a huge area. The psychological aspects of success are very, very important, and you must develop self-belief. And I'm going to talk about that and in some detail, but to give you an idea, where are the answers? Where can we find the answers? The answers are, what we have to do is realize that when we look at everything that's going wrong, we have to realize that we are the common denominator. And that's sometimes sounds a bit harsh, but basically it is a fact that we cannot expect anybody else to do it for us. We've got to look at it and say, what can we do? And we have to take responsibility and own it. And this reminds me a lot of when I used to play football. I used to play a lot of football back in Tunbridge Wells. I joined a club when I was 12 years old, and I was lucky to play for this club. And we were very successful as a team, and we used to win loads of trophies. We used to win leagues. We used to win cups. And one of the most interesting things about that club was that we all really, really hated losing. We were really, really bloody awful losers, and we didn't like it. We didn't like losing. We really hated it. And because we hated it so much, it didn't happen very often. And that was really good. But it was interesting because when I think about how I did, and I was thinking about this earlier today, and this is what the training was going to be about. And I looked back, and I remember this one game we were playing this team near Tunbridge Wells, and we were playing them for the league. They were second and we were first. And I was on the pitch, and I was the best player on the pitch. I don't mind sharing that with you. I'm not boasting, it's just a fact. I was the best player on the pitch by a distance. I ran the whole game, basically. And this was a really big surprise, not only to me, but to lots of people, because it was a really freezing cold day. It was like sleet. So it was like raining and cold, windy, muddy. And I wasn't really, when I played my best, I would have played best like if they played football in the summer when the sun was shining and it was nice and warm, because I wasn't much of a soldier in those days. And this would have been when I was in my early, probably about 23, 24. And we got to the pub afterwards and everybody was really happy because we'd won. And I go to the bar to get a drink. And the manager of the team was at the bar, and he kind of announced to all the people in the bar, he said that Neil's a frustrating player. He said it really loud so that everybody could hear it. And I looked at him and I thought, is he talking about me after the way I've just played? And I said, are you talking about me? And he said, yes. He said, you are one of the most frustrating people I've ever had in any of my teams. He said, because you're so inconsistent, it's unbelievable. He said, today you were fantastic. You ran the game, but some weeks you turn up and we don't even know you're on the pitch. This was like in front of the whole pub. And I thought it was such a wake up call. And I thought it was really clever what he did, because he told me when we just virtually secured the league and we won the match. So it was kind of like a good time to give me bad news, if you see what I mean. But when I look back at that period, I was very, very inconsistent. No question about it. And it fascinates me as to why that would be the case. And I see some people in the business, and they're the same. They've reached a level of competence. They understand what they need to do. They understand how to do it. And even quite often they demonstrate that they can actually do it. But they don't do it with any consistency. They're up and down, and their attitude is such that what happens when your attitude's up and down, they lose confidence, it erodes their confidence, and it also means that their performance is up and down like mine was. My performance was up and down. Some days I would be great, other days I would be like ineffectual on the pitch. So this is really, really important, that we not only need to be aware of how to become competent, we need to become consistent. And how do you get that to happen? And one of the most interesting things when I look at people is they start complaining about stuff, and they spend far too much energy looking at the obstacles. And I was just like this. When I played football, I would complain about all kinds of things. They were playing me in the wrong position, or the tactics were wrong. We were playing too many long balls, not enough short balls. And I would focus on all the things that was wrong, mainly with other people, not wrong with me, mainly with what was wrong with the manager, what was wrong with the back four. The back four was too deep. It didn't push up quick enough. We didn't squeeze the play enough. We played too many long balls, not enough short balls. And I would spend all my time whinging and moaning and groaning about all the things that I didn't feel were perfect. But of course, I thought I was perfect myself. See, that's the thing. So, and I see people in the business like this, and they complain about having to do Zoom calls. They complain about having to send samples. They complain about, and do you know what? It's just because they're focused on the wrong things. They're putting too much energy into what's missing instead of putting energy into what's there. And the reality is we have an amazing opportunity. We have incredible products, and we have the ability to reach out to people and change people's lives. And we need to forget about what's missing, because it never runs perfectly, and you just have to go onto the pitch and get the job done. That's what you have to do. And you have to do it week in, week out. And it took me a long time. It took me till I was about 27, 28 to get that right when I played football. But it's really, really important. So you must build mental muscle, and you must develop the right habits. What are the right habits? Now, Peter was just talking about one aspect of the business, which is really, really important. And I'm just going to cover this really quickly, because this is where the training morphed into something else. But you know that I often recommend the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So if you haven't read that book, either get the download, get it, the audio version of it. But he says that you can only develop a habit if 3 things overlap. So knowledge is knowing what to do. So if we say to people, you need to sell essential oils, and you need to enroll 5 customers a month, for example, that's like knowing what to do. And then we say to you, and this is how we do it. We do an initial phone call, and then we do a Zoom call, or we do a class, and then we enroll them and give them the Home Essentials kit. So that's kind of how you do it. And there will be some skills contained within that, which I will talk about briefly. But so first of all, we know what to do, then we know how to do it. But the third thing, the attitude, is why we should do it, and why we should do it to the best of our ability. And quite often that's the one that people struggle with. So they know what to do. And I know there's people in my business who are competent. They have learned what to do, and they do know how to do it. They may not be brilliant. They may not be as good as Peter or me, but they're competent enough. And the good news is you only have to be competent. You don't have to be brilliant, actually, especially now, because we've got all these systems in with 3 classes a week. We're going to have group wellness consultations. So there are some skills, but they're not hugely difficult to learn. But one of the skills which I believe people need to develop is number 5, habit number 5, which he describes as seek first to understand and then be understood, which is basically listening. The skill is listening, or to put it another way, it's empathy. If you were to ask me what is the number 1 thing that people need to be able to demonstrate in the processes that we use, it's empathy. It's much more important than things like enthusiasm, determination, and all those things that people talk about in terms of building a business. It's more important than having a vision. It's more important than anything else. Empathy is the most important thing. And what that basically means is you being able to listen to another person and try to understand and walk in their shoes. And if you do that, the place to do that is on the initial telephone call. So you don't have to be outgoing. You don't have to be charismatic. You don't have to be a certain personality type. You just need to be able to ask open questions and really listen to the answers. And if you really listen to people, they will naturally come to your Zoom classes. So that's like the key skill, is empathy. Now, success is based on the compound effect working in your favor. And the compound effect is the results of what we do every day. It isn't the results of what we do occasionally. So going back to the football analogy, if we played, I don't know how many games a season we played, maybe 35 games a season, whatever it was, I probably played well in about 7 or 8 of them. Maybe a bit more, hard to say. Maybe half of them, maybe a bit less. I don't know, actually, looking back. But if you want to be successful, you have to play well every week in doTERRA. And you should think about it. It's actually quite helpful to think about it as a game and think about the tasks that you've got to perform each day, because the good news is the tasks that we have to like undertake each day, picking up the phone, speaking to people that responded to advertising, having a conversation, listening to them, getting them onto a Zoom class. They're not complex. So this is really interesting. Success in doTERRA is not complicated. It is not difficult or complex or so skill, it doesn't require some kind of specialized skill that we need to develop, which would make it difficult for most people to do. Anybody can have a conversation with someone and ask questions and listen and show empathy. It's not a difficult thing to do, but you have to do it all the time. So you must know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Here's a quote from Billie Jean King, who was a tennis player, a bit before my time actually. But she said, I think self-awareness is probably the most important thing towards being a champion. Now, why do I mention that to you? Because you have the opportunity to be a champion in doTERRA. So being a champion would be like getting to diamond. I don't know what percentage of people get to diamond, but it won't be like a huge percentage, because most people, A, don't go on the journey to start with, and B, they don't give it long enough, and C, they don't understand what's required to make it actually happen for long enough to get that in place. But I absolutely passionately believe anybody can do it. Anybody can become a doTERRA champion if you follow what we teach you to follow and you want it badly enough. But you've got to want it. You've got to want it, and you've got to give it everything you've got. So if it's to be, it's up to me. And that's an attitude that people have to and must adopt, because if you think someone's coming along anytime soon to build your business for you, you are under a grave misapprehension. No one's coming. You are not going to sign up a superstar. You have to become the superstar. In fact, you don't. You have to just become competent and then teach other people how to become competent, but consistently, and you need to put those numbers in place. It's quite interesting listening to Peter, having enrolled 90 people. When I first joined, and I've mentioned this to you before, and I asked Nathan Bowles what he'd done, and he said he'd enrolled about 200 customers, him and Rebecca, over 3 years, which is about 70 a year. So if you think of it in those terms, it isn't something which is unattainable, but it does demonstrate remarkable mental muscle, remarkable consistency and resilience. In other words, they just kept doing it. They just kept sending out the samples. They just kept doing the classes because they knew no one else was going to do it for them. And no one else is going to do it for you either. So dare to dream and work to win. It's a question. It's a question. Do you dare to dream and will you work to win? It's a question, but in this case. But I believe that it's also a really good book, which I've got here. It is a really good book, and we are going to put some books on the website very soon. Before I forget, I must thank Peter actually for the fantastic job he's done. I've just been looking at the wholesale customer section on the website, which now looks amazing. So thanks to Peter for all the work that he does on that. It's absolutely brilliant. So this book, Dare to Dream and Work to Win, one of the things that he talks about is self-doubt. And he says that what's important about these moments of doubt is their frequency, their duration, and their intensity. And this is in the book Dare to Dream and Work to Win, and it's in part 2, which is the psychological side of success. And if you are experiencing self-doubt, he says it's actually okay. And I say it's okay, it's normal, but it's not normal. It's not acceptable to experience it every day of the week for the rest of your life. That isn't acceptable. And you need to cut that out. You need to stop it. It's okay to have moments of doubt. It's natural. We're all human. And going back to the footballing analogy, I had lots of confidence issues in the early days, and that was the problem. The problem was my mentality. It wasn't that I couldn't play. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do or how to do it. In fact, I could do it better than most people. But my mentality was shaky. It was up and down. And I was controlled. My attitude was controlled by circumstances. So if things didn't go the way I wanted them to go, I'd start complaining about things that were going wrong instead of being focused on the outcome. And you need to focus your mind on why you're building the business and the outcomes you want, and then you need to just keep doing it. But I would definitely recommend you read the book. If you haven't read the book, he says some really fascinating things about self-doubt. And he says, keep in perspective that all of us have moments of doubt. We may doubt ourselves, our stamina, our skill, our team, our confidence in network marketing, and our company, etc. So he says it's okay to have moments of self-doubt, but there's a big difference between having moments of self-doubt and an entrenched mindset, which is basically sabotaging your success. So you need to take care of that. And, I recommend you get the book. It's on page 91 if you're interested in having a look at what he says about self-doubt. So here's some things, though, and I've heard Peter talk about this, but it is fascinating when we talk about what it takes to be successful. And I think one of the things that Jim Rohn said is that if you want to be successful in anything, you should make a study of success, which is really good advice. So on my bookshelf here, you will see loads of biographies of really successful people in all kinds of different fields. And I'm going to leave you with 3 of them tonight. But the first one is this guy. Now, those of you that are Geordies will probably know this guy because he spent quite a lot of time in Newcastle. And this is a football, going back to the original part of the training was about football. And I used to follow this guy when he played for Liverpool, and he became captain of England. Then he eventually went to play for Hamburg. He was European Footballer of the Year, I think, twice in a row. And then he became manager of England eventually. But one of the things, when I read his autobiography, which you'll see is on the screen, which I've got, but he's now got it out again. I think he's updated it. But I read it when it first came out all those years ago. And he used to talk about other footballers. And he said in his autobiography that there were loads of other professional footballers who had a lot more ability than he did. He said some of them could pass a football like a dream. They could do things with a football that he could never hope to have done. But he said, but some of them couldn't pass a betting shop and they couldn't pass a pub either. So they had loads of ability, but they didn't have his desire. And when he played for Scunthorpe, I think it was Scunthorpe, in the early days, they told him he was too small and he couldn't play. But he went on to be captain of England. He doesn't get any higher. You can't get any higher than that as a player. And it was because of his ability. It wasn't, sorry, not his ability. It was because of his desire, not his ability. And he says that in the book. So if you want to be successful, study some successful people and listen to what they say. Because I've heard Peter say that loads of times. So I just thought it'd be nice if someone else said it. So there you go. So the next one is Sting, the musician. I also have his autobiography. And he says that in his story, if you get it, he went down to London with his guitar, and that's all he had. He went down with his pregnant girlfriend, I think, to London with no money and just his guitar. So he had nothing. He had absolutely nothing. And he says in his autobiography that he met loads of musicians who were far more accomplished than he was. In other words, they had more ability than he had. But he also says none of them made it. But look how he made it. You can't get making it better than he made it. Hundreds of millions probably he's made. So he made it to the top, even though he met people who had far more ability than him. But they didn't have his desire. That's the point. They didn't have his desire. And when I look at Peter and what he does every day, every week, every month, I see the same desire. And if you want to be successful, you need to study successful people, and you need to realize that it's about desire. It's about your level of desire and your attitude that will determine your altitude. And then the last one I'm going to leave you with is Mahatma Gandhi. And if you get a chance to read his autobiography, I recommend happily that you read it. And he says that every worthwhile accomplishment, big or little, has its stages of drudgery, which is kind of like an interesting description when I read that. And I thought, well, why would it be a matter of drudgery? And when I hear people moaning about having to do an hour Zoom call or having to phone people, you know, when they get their leads in the ad pool and they phone people, and like Peter said, and no one picks up the phone, they don't get through to anybody, and then they have to phone them again, and then they ring me if we're lucky, and I tell them to ring them again, and they think in their attitude and their mentality that it's drudgery. It's actually not. It's a privilege. And it's not what we do. Let me assure you, what we do is not hard work. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to share the oils and to share the opportunity. It isn't drudgery. It's actually a privilege. It's just the way we perceive it. But sometimes we get frustrated and we get disillusioned because we don't get the outcomes immediately that we want. But he says in every worthwhile accomplishment has its stages of drudgery, but it also has a beginning, a struggle. So sometimes you will struggle. Expect on your journey to diamond and beyond a struggle. There will be times when you find it difficult, and it's naive to think otherwise. Maybe that's why Gandhi put it in the book. Who knows? But he also says that there'll also be a victory. And what you've got to realize is that all successful people have to go through the same stuff. Peter has to go through the same stuff. I have to go through the same stuff, and so will you. That's why you need to build mental muscle, because it's no good hoping things will be easier, because they're not going to get easier. They are what they are. It's how we take on the challenge that makes the biggest difference. So that training, I've done that training. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to put that to you because I think it is fascinating when you look at success and what makes the difference between the people that make it and the people that don't make it. It's the things that we've been talking about tonight. The things that Peter talked about in his training were really about how to add value to the people that come into your team and anticipating the challenges that we know they will face, whether it's ringing leads or, you know, whether it's setting up Facebook pages, whatever it might be. We know we have much more experience than they have, so we have the ability to anticipate. Anyway, so thank you for listening to that. I just have one announcement before the end of the team call, which is really exciting. I hope you're excited. Are you all ready? Okay, here we go. So the announcement is this, that on February the 23rd, 2019, we will be going back to the Stratford Manor for our second event, and the event will feature special guest speakers, Nathan and Rebecca Bowles, presidential diamonds, most successful couple that currently based really in the UK. And that event will be put on the Facebook group in the events section in a minute when I finish this team call, and you can start booking your tickets and promoting that event to new team members. So it's nearly 4 months. I wanted to give people as much notice as possible. Then we did look for some other venues in the area, in kind of central part of the UK, but this is the best venue for the growth in numbers that we anticipate. And we will have, just so that you know, the room that we were in was only one half of the room. We will have the other half of the room for this event as well. So the room will basically be double the size. So every reason to double the growth in the business and double the number of people coming. So we should aim for at least 300 people at that event. And one of the keys to the building the success of the business is to build for events and to promote events and to get people into a positive environment where they can meet other people. But this time it's fantastic news because Nathan and Rebecca have agreed to speak to us. So if you haven't met them, you can go and meet Nathan and Rebecca and talk to them. And we will get them to share their success tips as well, because it will give you immense value. We'll also be doing lots of other things in that event, which I'll announce nearer the time. So thank you very much for coming on tonight. That basically concludes everything that I wanted to say. Thanks to Peter for that training. I didn't know he was going to do that. I thought he was only going to do 10 minutes, so that was even better. So thanks for coming on. Well done to everybody, and I'll post the recording of this team call in the Facebook group in about 45 minutes from now, so getting on towards 9:45, 10 o'clock. Please do tag your teams in the recording if they're not on here now, and we will see you all again very soon. Thank you very much.